So let's go on with making a decent render setup for our shots, and then make an epic compositing, through the process of which we will learn a high amount of great techniques. And for this compositing tutorial, we will use the shot number 1. And of course, you can use the same compositing techniques for all the shots we have made. Let's start with the render panel, where we should tweak the samples of the render. Here is a tip. This shot, and of course all the shots that we have made, are aggressively responsive to the number of samples. I mean, the higher you set the samples, the better result you will get. And it is also worth mentioning that the higher the samples, the less noise you will have. So if your PC can handle that, try a high sample number like 2000 or 3000. But to get a decent result, we can go with 1000. That is exactly what I did for my own render. 500 will be also okay, since we are not supposed to work magic with the low PC specs. Then a very important point here. Under no condition enable denoise, because the whole purpose of this tutorial was to make a hyper-realistic space scene. And if you enable denoise, your final render will turn into a painting, which will really destroy the whole concept. So make sure to disable denoise. Your render will be noisy, but I will teach you a very good technique to denoise it in the compositing tab. Let's scroll down. As I have mentioned in the part 1, definitely enable motion blur. And since the camera animation is slow, we can decrease the amount of it. Set the shutter on 0.3. Next up, under Performance, enable Persistent Data. This will highly help to render faster. Finally, we have the Color Management tab, that we have completely covered it in the shot 1. But here is a good tip. We are going to render in OpenEXR format, so that we can tweak this setting even after the render. Now go to the Output panel. The resolution and frame rate were covered before. Let's get over here, the Output tab. Set the file format on OpenEXR. This works magic. For the color, we don't need the alpha channel, so switch it into RGB. And for the color depth, float half will be enough. But again, if you have a good PC, go for float full. The codec on zip will be totally fine. Finally, for the image sequence, disable overwrite, so that if your render has been interrupted or you stop it yourself, next time that you want to render, the render will continue from where you left, and it won't start rendering all over again. That's a pretty nice feature. By the way, I have recently made a tutorial on how to make a perfect workflow for your render. In that tutorial, I have covered these topics completely and in depth, so you can definitely take a look at it. The link will be in the description. Then let's pick a location for our render. I highly suggest make a new folder and rename it to Shot 1. Then for the name, let's also go for Shot 1. Add an underline at the end. Now we can go to Render and Render Animation. The hotkey is Ctrl and F12, but before that, make sure you are in solid view. Press Ctrl and F12. After your render is done, we can go through the compositing. Now let's jump into the compositing panel. From here, we can see that we are in our main scene. So click on this icon to make a new scene. Rename it to Comp. Then pin it from here, so that every time we go to the Compositing tab, we will have the comp scene. Go to Layout and pin the main scene over here. So now if we go to the Compositing, we will have the comp. And also in the Layout, we have the main scene. Let's begin. Enable Use Nodes. We don't need the Render Layers node, since we have rendered our project. So delete it, then press Shift A, search for Image. Add it over here, then plug it into the Composite node. Click on Open, then navigate to the folder where you have your OpenEXR sequence. This is our OpenEXR sequence. Select the first one, then press A to select all of them. Finally, open Image. There you have your OpenEXR sequence. Make sure to enable Auto Refresh. Now to see our image, hold down the Shift and the right click, drag across the connection line to make a reroute point. Then Ctrl-Shift-click on the reroute point to bring up the viewer node. Press V to zoom back and press Alt-V to zoom in. But to make our lives much easier, open a new window here and switch it into Image Editor. Then open this drop-down menu and search for Viewer Node, which is this one. If we select it, we can see the OpenEXR sequence in this window. So let's scroll back to have a better look at it. And for the bottom one, disable backdrop. The first thing that comes into mind is, why is it so different? Well, we made the shot number 1 something like this, but here it is so different. The reason is, since we have made a new scene and rename it to comp, which was pretty necessary, we also have to apply the same setting in the new scene, which is this comp scene. So in the render panel, the render engine doesn't matter anymore. Neither the motion blur matters. Open the color management tab. See, as I said, even after render, we can tweak them. The view transform was set on AGX and the look on high contrast. And finally, the exposure, we increased that to 3. And there you have it. Now jump into the output panel. The resolution was set on 3000 by 1500. If you had a different resolution, match it from here. The frame rate was 30 frames per second and our timeline was 200 frames. And we can see that from here. The rest of the setting is not needed at all. Now let's start compositing. The first thing, as I have mentioned before, is to denoise our sequence. So Shift A, add a denoise node, add it here. The noise is totally gone. So if I press M to mute it, here is before and here is after. But in most cases, there is a high probability that we lose so many details. So here is a very nice way to prevent that. Let me make some room here. Shift A, search for mix color. Add it over here and make the connection like so. Plug the image sequence into the first image input. Then plug the denoise into the second image. Now using this factor property, we can decide how much we want our image to be denoised. 1 means the entire effect of the denoise and 0 means no denoise at all. So let's set it on 0.5, which means half of the influence of the denoise node. And that is a pretty nice way to keep the details. Now let's get to the fun part, which is adding the lens flare. And for that, we are going to a great asset called Easy Lens Flare, which was made by this great and hardworking 3D artist. So definitely check his channel and give him some credit. The link to download the lens flare will be in the description. It comes as a blend file. After downloading, now to add it into your scene, go to File and choose Append. Then navigate to where you have downloaded the file, which is this one. Double click to open it. Then open the Node 3 collection. Here you can see we have 5 different files. So select the first 4 and then Append. Now to have access to them, press Shift A. In the group, we can see them. So add all of them into your Compositing tab. Before using them, there are 2 really important points. Here select the mix color and the denoise node. Press M to mute them. Since this denoise node is really heavy, when we are done, we will turn it on again. The second point, which is insane, press N. In the side menu, open the Option tab. And from here, you can see that the device is set on CPU. It means the compositor is using the CPU. And subsequently, we will have a really slow processing in this tab while compositing. So switch it into GPU. Now your compositing will be much faster. Let's add the lens flare. Pick the first one and drag it over here. You can see the name. It is called Cook Anamorphic. To combine it to the footage, add a mix color. Drop it on the connection. Plug the composite output on the lens flare into the second image input. And plug the image sequence to the lens flare. Or we can plug this mix color so that we can use the denoised image. Switch the mix color into lighten. On the lens flare, we have 2 properties, highlight threshold and flare strength. Adjusting these properties totally depends on the scene. Different scenes, different numbers. In our case, let's set the threshold on 6. and strength on 0.52. You can see the change from here. Now select the group, press tab to enter. Let's scroll back and get over here. These nodes have the setting that we should adjust. First of all, set this mix color factor on 0. Then set all the parameters on absolute 0. Here is a point. You should play around with them to get familiar, and it is really easy. Just increase or decrease the values to see what's best for your scene. For this space scene, here we have this bloom property. Let's increase it to 0.8 to get this cool effect. For the first lens flare, I only used this bloom effect, but I highly suggest play around with the other effects to see what they exactly do. Now click on this icon to exit the group. So here is a very nice way to control the amount of the effect using this factor property on the mix color. We can decide how much of this effect we want to use. Let's leave it on 1 for the time being and we will get back to it. With the group selected, press Shift D to make a duplicate and move it to the right. Select the mix color, press M to mute it, which will kill the effect. Duplicate the mix color and place it after the first one. Unmute the mix color by pressing M. Make the connection exactly like before. Unmute the mix color by pressing M. Then a very important point. Since we have duplicated this lens flare group, they share the same exact setting. So if we make any changes to one of them, it will also be applied to the other one. To prevent that, click on this number 2 to make a unique group. Now we can select this group, press tab to enter. Set the bloom on 0. Scroll down the blue anti-glare, which is a nice blue effect, but we shouldn't use a high value for it. 0.2 could be fine. Exit the group. I guess that's too much. Let's set the factor on 0.5 to use half of the influence. Yeah, I like that. Now if you mute the mix color, here is before and here is after. Just try to be gentle and you can always get back to them and adjust them again. Mute the mix color and then bring the second lens flare group. Duplicate the mix color, unmute it, make the connection exactly like before, set the factor on 1. By the way, this second lens flare is called Minolta 50mm. For this lens flare, set the threshold on 3 and a strength on 1.9. Then enter the group. Get over to this part, set all the parameters on 0. We are going to use the red ring halo and the halo blue. By the way, this connection line is for the red ring halo. And if you want to tweak the red ring, we should tweak this one. So be aware of that. Don't tweak this one. Otherwise, you enable the bloom. So let's set the red ring on 0.155. And by doing that, we get these nice red rings. So you can increase it to see it better. Set the halo blue on 0.06. It may not be visible, but if I increase that, here is the effect. So I like it to have a very faint effect. Let's set it on 0.08. Yeah, that's better. And if you think the effect is low or high, simply just increase or decrease the values. Exit the group. And if you ask me, I like to use half of the influence. So I set the factor on 0.5 or maybe 0.6. Mute the mix color, duplicate it, then add this lens flare. I mean this one. Add it over here and then simply make the connection. Unmute the mix color, set the factor on 1. For this lens flare, set the threshold on 3.42 and strength on 0.1. Enter the group and get over here, where we have the anti-glare O. This one is so cool. I really like this rainbow-like effect. So if I increase that, we can see it better. It is really nice, but we shouldn't use a high value for it. Otherwise, it will destroy the effect. So let's set all the parameters on 0 and then get back to anti-glare. Set it on 0.3. We also have the gold wash. It is not that much visible, but you can definitely feel it. Let's set it on 0.75. Then the haze makes everything more alive. Again, set it on 0.75. Done, exit the group. And let's slightly decrease the factor, 0.95. Mute the mix color, duplicate both of them. Make the connection like before. Unmute the mix color, set the factor on 1. Make sure to make the lens flare a unique one. Then for the duplicated one, set the threshold on 3. Enter the group and set all these on 0. Move up a little bit where we have the bloom effect. Just slightly increase it. So if you increase it a lot, it will totally burn out your image. So let's set it on 0.01 to get this nice cool effect. Then here is a really cool trick. Press Shift A, search for Hue Saturation. Place it on the bloom collection. And by doing that, now we can change the color using the hue property. So let me increase the bloom a little bit. Just look at that. The green looks really insane. So I'm going to keep it on the same blue. Let's exit the group, mute the mix color, and here we have the last lens flare. It is called Super Tacomar 50mm. Duplicate the mix color, place it over here, make the connection. Unmute the mix color. Set the threshold on 3 and strength on 0.1. Oh my god, it already looks pretty cool. So enter the group and let's get over here. As you already can guess, set all the parameters on 0. The big yellow, let's go for 0.05. Here you can see the effect. If I increase that, it's this effect. A small orange, again on 0.05. And finally, a small halo follows, which is down here. Set it on 0.23. It is this one. Exit the group, select all the muted mix colors, press M to unmute them. Oh, it looks insane. If it's not insane, then what it is? So let's scrub through the timeline to see if it works well for every single frame. Here seems fine. Also here is okay. Let's move forward again. Oh, take a look at here. We are having some problem starting from somewhere around frame 130. And the problem is from the first lens flare group. So to fix that, we can decrease the factor. But let's say we want to keep the amount of the effect on this side. And we want to decrease it on the other side. Then what? Well, in that case, we can use mask. So from here, set the image editor on mask. Make a new mask over here. Let's rename it to number 1. Press N. In the mask tab, make a new mask layer. Let me make some room. So I want to mask this part. And I should make a mask like this. So over here, hold down the Control key and click to make a point. Don't release the buttons. Drag the mouse to make the handle. This is pretty necessary once we want to smooth the mask. Otherwise, we cannot. Then let's get down over here. Control click to make another point. Don't forget to make the handle. When you want to make a new point, make sure to select the last point. Make another one over here. Here. Finally, control click on the first point to close the curve. So as I said, we want to mask this part. Now to use the mask, set the image editor back on view. We should use the mask for the first lens flare. So pick this mix color, move it up a little bit, Shift A, search for mask. Place it over here, then from here, pick the mask that we just made. It is called number 1. Plug it into the factor on the mix color. And it is working the opposite. So to fix that, add a map range and place it after the mask. We should switch these values, to min and to max. So set to min on 1 and to max on 0. Now it is working properly, but the mask is just too sharp. And as I mentioned before, we should smooth it. So let's get back to the mask. Zoom back a little bit, and here are our points. So press A to select all of them. Then to see what is exactly going on, open the mask display menu and enable overlays. Now press Alt S, drag your mouse to smooth the mask. Something like that looks nice. So disable overlays, set the image editor back on view. So we don't have that sharp edge now. But the point is we don't have any glare on this side. And that's because the 2max value is set on 0. So if we increase that, we can bring back the glare, as you can see. For the 2max, let's go for 0.2. Then for this side, we should tweak the 2min value. Set it on 0.3. Now we are talking. It is much better now. You see the effect is so slight and so real. So let's scrub through the timeline a bit to see if there's any more problem. And as we move forward, we can see again this side has more glare than it needed. And to fix that, we can again take advantage of our good friend the map range node, where we can animate the 2max value. So let's go to frame 131. This is where the glare starts to increase. Right click on the 2max property and insert keyframe. Then we should get to somewhere around here. Yeah, frame 151. Set the 2max on 0.1, which means half the influence. Right click, add another keyframe. Now from frame 131 to frame 151, the glare starts to decrease, and this will keep our effect nice and steady in place, as you can see. The scene already looks pretty decent. However, if you ask me, I would say we could use some more bloom. So let's use the Blender default glare node. Duplicate the mix color and make the connection. Use the glare output. Plug it into the second image input. Then plug this mix color to the image input on the glare node. And here is our effect. Switch it into bloom, set the quality on high. Right now the effect is too harsh. Open highlights and increase the threshold to 4.05, which will kill the effect a little bit. Set the smoothness on 1. Then for the strength, let's go crazy. 10. And finally size on 1. Don't worry, we will fix that. Over here, press Shift A, add a mask node. And from here, pick the mask that we made before, the number 1. Plug the mask into the factor. Add a map range to adjust it. Set the 2min on 0.05 and 2max on 0.02. Now we are talking. So if I select the mix color, press M to mute it, here is without the new glare node and here is with the new glare node. It looks much better. Next up, we can start to give our shot some color grading. And we should change the main color of the shot into a nice blue color. So Shift A, search for color balance. Add it on the connection. We should play around with the lift. So hold down the Shift key because these values are super sensitive. Hold down the Shift key and slightly move it towards a blue tint color. Oh, I guess that's too much. Just a tiny bit of change. Yeah, this totally works. So if you move it a lot, it will definitely destroy your shot. I have moved it a tiny bit towards this blue tint color. So let me zoom in. If I mute it, now you can see the change. And I guess it looks better now. Then here is a very nice trick to separate the RGB colors. So Shift A, search for separate color. Place it on the connection, then add a combine color. Place it here, and then connect the colors respectively. Add a mask node, switch it into multiply. Set the bottom value on 1. Place it on the red channel, which actually makes no change because the value of the multiply is set on 1. So duplicate the mask node and place it on the other channels. So I guess we can decrease the red channel a little bit. Let me zoom. So let's set the value on the red channel is the first one. So let's set it on 0.9. Yeah, you can see the change. Then a little bit of increase for the blue channel, which is the last one. 1.05. Yeah, I like it now. Now add a hue saturation. And if you ask me, I guess our color has become too blue. So we can get back to the color balance, and if we decrease the factor, we can decrease the influence of this color balance. So let's decrease it a little bit more. Yeah, this is better now. Now slightly increase the value to brighten up your image. Yeah, this is much better now. So I set it on 1.1. I guess we should decrease the contrast because some parts are so dark, other parts are so bright. So search for color correction. Place it here. The contrast of the master, which means the contrast of the brightest parts. And these values are super sensitive. You should be pretty gentle, just a slight change. So let's set it on 0.998. You see, that makes a lot of change, and if you decrease it a lot, see what happens. Much better now. Now to top it off, add a lens distortion. Set the dispersion on 0.02. Really nice. You can see the edge here, and if you like, you can also use the distortion. So let's set it also on 0.02. And if something like this happens to you, you can enable fit. Finally, we can finish the compositing by adding a nice vignette. And we should add the vignette before the lens distortion. So let's make some room here. Shift A, search for mix color. Place it here, leave it on mix. Make sure to plug the color correction into the second image input. Then we should add the ellipse mask. After that, add a scale node, and finally add a blur node. Make the connection like so. Then plug the blur node into the factor on the mix color and switch this color into absolute black. Then on the ellipse mask, set the width on 1 and the height we can go for 0.67, I guess. Yeah, that's a good value. Now to smooth it out, let's get to the blur node. Enable gamma and set the X and Y on 360. And if you think the effect is too much, you can set them on 720. Yeah, that's better now. So if I mute the mix color, here is before, here is the after. You can even use the scale. So if we scale it up slightly, we can decrease the amount of the vignette. And that's the end of the compositing part. Let's render our image sequence. And for that case, we need the video editing tab. And if you can find it, like in my case, click on the plus icon, video editing. Here you can see the video editing tab. First of all, make a new scene and rename it to preview. Don't forget to pin it over here. Then to add the image sequence, open add. In the scene, choose the comp scene. And there you have it. And we only need to quickly adjust the setting. In the render panel, scroll all the way down. The color management tab, the look was set on high contrast and increase the exposure to 3. Head over to the output panel. The resolution was 3000 by 1500. The frame rate was set on 30 frames per second, and our image sequence was 200 frames. Scroll down, set the file format on FFmpeg video, so that the final render will be in a video format. Open encoding and set the container on MPEG-4. Set the output quality on perceptually lossless. And finally, although we don't have any sound or song in the scene, set the audio codec on AAC. Otherwise, there will be a high probability that you will face some issues when you want to play the video on your cell phone. The rest of the setting is just fine. Now over here, open the Catch tab. Make sure these 3 properties are enabled: Final, Display, and the Catch Final, so that you can see the purple strip in the Video Sequencer tab over here. And if you press play, it starts to load up the catch. And when it finishes, you can see your final result in real time. It is not necessary, but just in case, you need to take a look at your image sequence to see if it has any bugs or problems, this is a nice way to do that. Now all we need to do is to go to render and render animation. And don't worry, it doesn't take long at all, because we have rendered our scene before, and this is just to turn this image sequence into a video format. So this was the final part of this series, which was dedicated to make a hyper-realistic space scene. And I hope this series have been helpful to you. So see you next time.